Welcome back. By now, it should be obvious that the Senate stood at the heart of political life in the Roman Republic. We also know that to gain entry, an individual first had to be elected by the people to the office of quaestor. But how did those elections actually work? And once someone was in the Senate, how did they climb higher? The answer lies in a voting system of breathtaking complexity, designed not for fairness, but for control. How did a republic that revered stability create a process so convoluted it could take days, and so skewed it often silenced the majority? To understand, we must look at the three separate public assemblies, each with a secret purpose: the Assembly of the Centuries, the Tribal Assembly, and the Plebeian Assembly. Let's start with the most prestigious, the Assembly of the Centuries. This body elected Rome's highest officials, consuls, praetors, and censors. Censors, whom I haven't spent much time on, were highly respected former consuls. Their main duty was maintaining the official membership roll of the Senate and conducting the census, which evaluated every citizen's wealth and assigned them to a voting class. Broadly speaking, there were 8 classes, divided by wealth and age into 193 distinct voting blocks. At the top were the patricians, the oldest, most prestigious families. They weren't necessarily the richest, but their lineage stretched back to the monarchy. This tiny group of a few hundred men was given 6 blocks. Just below them were the equites, the top 0.1% of society, immensely wealthy, often richer than the patricians, but lacking the right bloodline. They got 12 blocks. Combined, the elites controlled just over 9% of the vote. Then came the ordinary wealthy citizens, the first class, roughly the top 1%. They were assigned an overwhelming 80 blocks. The second, third, and fourth classes each got 20 blocks. The fifth class, the poorest property owners, got 30. At the very bottom were the proletarii, citizens with no property, the urban poor. Despite being the largest group by far, they were lumped into a single massive block. One more twist. Classes 1 through 5 were each split into senior blocks, age 46 plus, and junior blocks, age 45. Now, to the voting. A sitting consul would summon the assembly to the field of Mars, outside the city walls. Citizens sorted themselves into pens separated by wooden fences. To begin, one junior block from the first class was chosen at random to vote first. Why a junior block? Mostly to make a complex system even more confusing. Each block voted internally, then cast one vote for the entire assembly. It didn't matter if the block had 50 people or 500, one vote. If 2 consuls were being elected, each block submitted 2 different names. After the first block's result was announced, the remaining 39 junior blocks of the first class voted together. Then the patricians, the equites, and the senior blocks of the first class voted. By this point, 98 of the 193 votes, just over 51%, had been cast. If the candidates all had an absolute majority, the winners were declared and voting stopped. The poor never got a say. If no clear winner emerged, voting trickled down through the lower classes until someone crossed the 50% threshold. The moment they did, they were declared elected and removed from the ballot. The logic was naked. The elites voted first. If they agreed, the election was over. Only when they were divided did the poor get a voice. The proletaries' single block? It only mattered in the event of a tie. This was the assembly for the top jobs. For lower offices, Rome used the Tribal Assembly. This body elected military tribunes, quaestors, curule aediles, and the Pontifex Maximus. Here, all citizens were divided into 35 tribes based on geography, 4 for the city of Rome, 31 for the rest of Italy. But there was a catch. Tribal membership was hereditary and frozen in time. If your family moved to Rome generations ago, you still voted with your ancestral village's tribe. The result was a geographic absurdity the censors could never untangle. When convened, the tribes separated into 35 pens. Each tribe got 1 vote. One tribe was chosen at random to start, and voting proceeded randomly until a candidate got an absolute majority of 18 votes. Then it stopped. This system wasn't fair either. The 4 urban tribes were huge, packed with the poor who could easily attend. The distant rural tribes were small but carried the same voting weight. Those who could afford to travel from the countryside were older, wealthier, and more conservative. So the tribal assembly naturally favored wealthy Italian landowners over the urban poor. We see this manipulation in action. Recall the reversal of Cicero's exile. The bill had passed the Senate, but Clodius blocked it with armed gangs. So Pompey had it submitted to the tribal assembly instead. He then traveled the Italian countryside rallying Cicero's landowning supporters, urging them to come to Rome and vote. The strategy worked. Every tribe voted yes. Finally, there was the Plebeian Assembly, or Council of the Plebs. Only plebeians could vote here. It was convened by a tribune of the plebs and elected the plebeian aediles and the tribunes themselves. This was Rome's closest brush with democracy, a simple up or down vote. It was the only institution where the urban poor held real power, which explains why so many tribunes won office promising free grain. This assembly had one other critical role. It was the body that almost always gave final approval to Senate legislation. No debate, no amendments, just yes or no. Once it passed here, it was law. By the late Republic, as the Senate gridlocked and violence grew, this assembly began electing a series of extreme, radical tribunes. It's hard to ignore the cause and effect. The first two assemblies were engineered to delay, dilute, or disregard the will of the common citizen. Is it any wonder they eventually poured all their frustration into the one office they truly controlled, the tribunate of the plebs, with such force that it helped shatter the Republic? The story of Roman elections isn't just about procedure. It's a case study in how a ruling class tries to manage democracy and what happens when the managed decide they've had enough. Thanks for watching.